Hey, welcome to a new episode of Skin in the Game. I'm your host, John Cimperman, with my co-host,
Tim O'Shea.
Hey, Tim, want to again thank Holiday Valley for joining us as a partner on Skin in the Game. And as they begin to transition to the spring season, just want to remind all of our viewers, all of our listeners that, they do deliver 4 seasons of entertainment and a great place to visit, whether someone like you who doesn't ski or others who do.
This is my season at Holiday Valley coming up, John.
That's right.
Time for a ropes course. You coming out on the ropes course with me?
Well, it'll be the ultimate après ski because they're going to be wrapping up in another few weeks, so it'll be after ski for you.
You know it.
I have a great interview coming up, and Tim, I know that you're not going to be able to join me for this interview, but I have a friend and former colleague, Rick Nadeau, who owns Nadeau Sports, which does a ton of work in grassroots growth of the sport of hockey. And I thought it was really important and timely to get Rick to join us as we talk a little bit about how can we take advantage of gold medal wins on the U.S. side for both the men and the women to help grow the sport of hockey and get more kids on skates.
Yeah, and I'm really excited, John, to hear this interview. And, I know Rick's name, and I've known of him through you, and the great work he's doing in helping manage the details that actually help teams and organizations get kids playing their sport, in this case, the sport of hockey.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, we've seen, you can look in any number of measurements here, but with the USA women and the USA men both winning hockey gold medals, there are thousands, probably tens, hundreds of thousands of kids out there who are watching this, who are inspired by it. What do we do to get them, even a percentage of them, to get them actually playing hockey?
Right, and here's kind of some examples, right? In 1980, it brought us someone like Mike Modano, who is one of the best players to ever wear a USA sweater. And then in the mid-'90s, you had these World Cup of hockey teams that competed nationally and did very well nationally, brought players like Patrick Kane into the league, right? So there's certain milestones when things happen on the ice that do translate to, bringing more kids and more future Olympians into the sport. And I think what we just witnessed on the women's side and on the men's side is going to be that next milestone where we see that next generation of USA hockey player come on board.
Exactly. And the opportunities are really, really lining up here in hockey like they never have before. You have the NHL that, boys and young men can aspire to, and you have the PWHL,
which continues to do extremely well.
They're doing astronomically well, right? And I know you guys will get into this, but and we've had conversations on this program about how young women who play hockey now have a well-run, growing, exponentially growing major league to aspire to. That was long not the case, and it is the case now. So now you've got the women's and men's teams, winning these gold medals. Right. That's the motivator we need.
Yeah,
right?
and
so I'm really excited. I'm excited about this.
Yeah, well, and I just think this leads really well into our news segment, where the PWHL continues to sell out arenas. They just did, nearly 18,000 people in Seattle over the last few weeks, and it was just announced, and this is awesome, that women's professional hockey, the PWHL, is going to get its first national TV broadcast. I will tell you, I don't know if that happens if we don't win a gold medal. I mean, that really helped. It may have happened, but I got to tell you, winning that gold medal and the drama and obviously the skill and the eyeballs that watch that women's game really helped get that national TV exposure.
I'm so excited for it, and whether it did or didn't help make it happen, and I tend to agree with you, I'm sure it did, the viewership of that game is absolutely going to be driven by it. And, and the thing too, John, and we've talked about this on the program as well, is when you go to a PWHL game, when you can sense and you can see the relationship between the players and the fans, right? And it's not that the players are pretty accessible as you can be in hockey. It's not the easiest sport to, with the glass to put players and fans together, but the players do interact, but more so when you see how the fans just embrace, and I'm talking about the young fans, how they embrace these players, how they look up to these players and want to be on those teams one day.
Right.
To then be able to turn on a TV
right.
and see it. And we know sports is the only appointment viewing left.
That's right.
So to turn on a TV, watch it live.
Or maybe an election, but we don't want to go there.
I mean, I want to go there because I love that. No, you're right. Let's be real. The elections take too long. You get the sports results way quicker.
Exactly. Yeah. So Montreal plays New York in Detroit. It's one of their neutral sites games, nationally broadcast on the Ion Network. So that's exciting for the women's game. And I do think that will lead to more national TV deals for the league.
And the PWHL, by the way, you got to give them credit too they've had steady growth, but it's been both fast and incremental. In other words, they're not trying to do too much all at once.
Right.
They're a couple of years in, and if you just look at the sponsorships that they've obtained, Mattel and others, the way that they've spread the game from arena to arena with the takeover tour, the neutral site games, and what they were doing with the broadcast. This is a very smartly run organization.
Yeah. No, they're doing things right, and everything's lining up. So, and we're big fans of it. So we'll do what we can.
Huge fans.
To do that. Hey, speaking of Olympics, before we get to our interview, here in New York State, first of all. Very successful games in Italy from a TV perspective. There were some issues with some of the warmer weather. There were some issues with how far things were spread out, but overall very successful. And I thought it was interesting that New York State Governor Kathy Hochul kind of put New York's hat back in the ring for future Olympic Games here in New York State.
And I'm glad she did. And by the way, there's no chance of New York being that warm in February. So warm weather probably won't be an issue. Now, I mean, Governor Hochul, who I know well and I've known for a long time, she's a big thinker, right? She's a big thinker, and I do mean this in a good way. When she sees an opportunity to go for something that seems, it shouldn't seem out of reach. It's New York State. We've hosted Olympics before. There's New York City. There's Lake Placid, the home of the 1980 Olympics.
Which, by the way, state-of-the-art facilities now.
Even now.
Yes.
Yeah, even more so now.
Yes.
So, she knows what New York State has. So do the lawmakers who are lined up with her or who she's lined up with to do this. It is not an impossibility. It's a good idea. It's a great idea.
What's so interesting is Milan was 4 hours away from Cortina, which is Milan hosted the figure skating, the ice hockey, and then it was out in the mountains about 4 hours away that the skiing was hosted. Not too dissimilar from the distance between New York City to Lake Placid.
Yeah, it's a straight shot.
It's
a long straight shot, but it's a straight shot. And and there's a lot of space in between where you might be able to do some events too. I would think for an Olympics, you would need that New York City, downstate New York infrastructure to support that number of guests, flying in from around the world, right? Could Lake Placid do it alone? They did it in 1980. I don't know that Lake Placid alone would do it now, but why not take advantage of the fact that you've got, one of the biggest cities on the planet, New York, and in a world-class facility in Lake Placid, which, by the way, is one of the very few places in this country, on this continent, or even in the world, where you can do some of these sports like luge and bobsled and skeleton, the sliding sports. That requires a special track that you don't just find everywhere.
Right.
Why keep building it every 4 years?
Well,
right?
I think that's the thing, is just the money that is, I hate to say wasted on building these facilities that are only used for those few weeks. Let's leverage what we already have. Right. And as you said, the facilities in Lake Placid are state-of-the-art.
Right. Well, Hochul's she's a legacy thinker. I'll tell you that. And I we're talking about, at the late 2030s, early 2040s. fair to say she won't be governor then, right?
No, but she's planting the seeds now.
Yeah, but plant the seeds, and I'm glad she is. I hope it happens.
Yeah. Well, with that, let's get to our guest. So I'm gonna take this interview alone, but we're gonna have you back at the end because I want to discuss and get your input on the conversation. Rick Nadeau, who is the president and founder of Nadeau Sports, is going to join us on how we leverage and take the opportunity of the U.S. gold medal hockey teams to build the sport. Stay tuned.
Authenticity isn't something you manufacture. It's something you experience. At Holiday Valley, winter unfolds across fun slopes and the true ski town of Ellicottville. Ranked number 4 in the East by Ski Magazine. Winter is better here.
Hey, welcome back to Skin in the Game, and I'd like to welcome a friend and an old colleague to the program here, Rick Nadeau. Rick, thanks for joining us.
Of course, John. Thanks for having me on the show. Appreciate it.
So, hey, Rick, I'm trying to go back, man. We were, it might have been back when you were with the Rangers and the Knicks, and kind of driving the youth fandom for those teams. Is that, and do I have that right? That's the last time you and I worked together?
Yeah, I mean, years ago when I was overseeing fan development for the Rangers, and I want to say it was Beardathon.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
Start of everything, John. The Beardathon fundraiser for the NHL playoffs.
Yeah. Hey, by the way, that brings back a great memory. Yeah, I think we, with your help and that of 10 to 12 other NHL clubs, I think we raised couple $1 million for local charities. So yeah, those were fun days, my friend.
Yeah, that was a huge success. We had a lot of fun with that fundraiser. Made a lot of money in support of the Garden of Dreams Foundation the years that we did it in New York, and appreciate everything that you did to put us in that position.
Yeah, oh, that was great. Hey, Rick, the reason I wanted to get you on the show sooner than later, and because you brought up, youth fandom and growing the future generation of fans is what you were doing for the Rangers and the Knicks. It's now, and I want to dig into this, what you're doing with Nadeau Sports, but obviously with some of the excitement on the ice in Milan over the last few weeks, I thought our conversation was as timely as ever right now. So, but before we get into kind of what the Olympics could mean and how we can potentially leverage that for fandom on both sides of the border, but I just wanted to, for our listeners, just kind of, Rick, a little bit of your background. You mentioned, the work with MSG Sports, but just for our listeners, kind of what was your kind of career path to get you to where you are today?
Yeah, I appreciate that, John. I think, my focus when I was with the Knicks and the Rangers was really on grassroots community connection and engagement, marketing at its core, right? And
right.
Connecting those brands and the sports to the tri-state area and trying to get beyond those borders. My career started out of UMass. I spent 10 years in the ice rink business, very much same sort of other end of the spectrum with youth sports, but very grassroots, program operations, marketing, you name it. And then in 2008, I made the jump from the ice rinks into pro sports, and that was my gateway in was really youth sports, youth engagement. And over the course of 13 years at the Garden, my role evolved there from not just the Rangers and youth hockey, but across the spectrum of community and fan engagement. And then ultimately the other sport entities that the Garden managed, the Knicks, the Liberty at the time, and at the very end, the G League, the Westchester Knicks, et cetera. So, love that space. I love the impact that sports can have on kids in our communities, and leveraging the power of brands to open up doors and create more opportunities for kids.
Yeah. Well, here's what I always appreciated what you did and what the MSG Sports teams did. And a lot of folks are like, oh, they're the New York Knicks, they're the New York Rangers, right? They don't need help with the next generation of fans. But the organization had a focus, right? It's keep that pipeline full, don't take any fan for granted. And, it impressed me that an organization as big and as tenured as the Rangers and the Knicks would invest in grassroots marketing.
I think it was really two different approaches. Like one was engaging the kids and families that were already invested in the sport, right? And trying to improve their experience, create some extra excitement for them, a reason to stay in the game and continue playing. And more importantly, find a connection not only with the sport, but with our brands and our teams in a way that mattered, connected them to our brands so that they became fans and not just participants in the sport. Mm-hmm. And on the other side of the spectrum was trying to create opportunities for more kids to gain access to the sports, try the sports, and to find a pathway within the game. And so I think it really was always twofold, right? Programs like our summer camps and where you see it most professional sports outings is the kids getting access to the courts or the ice or the fields during intermissions or half times. And then on the other side of the spectrum was just entry points, right? On ramps to the game through things like Learn to Play or Try Hockey for Free, where kids could grab a stick and a pair of skates and get on the ice for the first time and experience the sport,
right?
And find out without any strings attached or any major hurdles or obstacles, get easy access to a sampling of the sport and the opportunity to see if it's something they wanted to do long term. And so it really was about both of those approaches at the same time, helping existing players dive deeper into the game and their connection and their passion for it, and trying to spark that interest amongst new families and new kids.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like that's what's led you into your post team or property career into Nadeau Sports. So if you could, give me some background on kind of the vision of Nadeau Sports and then really some of the areas of focus.
Well, I think it's pretty simple, right? Like I love the impact I was able to have through the brands at the Garden on creating opportunities and experiences for kids and families, and helping provide resources to communities that needed it, and now the opportunity to help other teams and other businesses, franchises get smarter, more effective, more efficient with how they invest in youth sports and in their communities, not only to build their brands and to drive awareness and interest, but also to grow their audiences in ways that matter, like addressable contacts and helping them maintain these relationships once they're established by being able to communicate with these families and invite them to games and to do other things, other experiences. And then the third piece is how it affects business growth, right? And the revenue impact through sponsorships, through ticket sales, by driving ROI on the programs, the investments, the marketing initiatives that are being led. Like thing like summer camp, as an example, is a self-sustaining marketing engine.
Right.
The fees that we were able to charge for camps in a lot of ways enabled us to grow and expand that program, while all the benefits of having those experiences built, not having to be funded necessarily because they were self-sustaining financially. So it allowed us to scale them and to create even more opportunity. So those three lenses are really what I work with teams now: is building their brand, broadening their fan base, and growing their business. And so it's been a lot of fun to get outside the New York area and start focusing on other markets. They're all unique. They have their own challenges and opportunities, and helping solve problems with folks, as you know, in these positions, super passionate. And a lot of times they just need an extra set of hands. They need another brain in the room to help them think through how to best go about this stuff, and really help them put pen to paper and bring vision to life. And so that's where I spend a lot of my time now, is diving in the trenches with those folks and really just being an extension of their teams.
Yeah. And Rick, are you working with primarily in hockey? Are you working on both sides of the border? Where's kind of your focus?
Yeah, I'm obviously, hockey is my background, so that's naturally where I can plug in easiest. I've done some projects with teams in MLS, and in the tech space. One of my first clients was our friends over at League Apps, and doing some work with those folks and just helping them expand their presence within the NHL teams and the ecosystem there. So, trying to branch out into more disciplines because I think the concept of fan development is fairly universal, and the theory and strategy behind it fits any business, any growing business that has an interest in expanding their customer base. And but hockey is my primary focus and where I've cut my teeth. So as I build my business, it's a natural place for me to start.
Right.
Where we go 5-10 years from now, anybody's guess.
Yeah. Well, not a bad place to start. And I think that's a great segue is, talk to us about kind of the state of hockey, right? Now we're, this show here, Skin in the Game, we're based in Buffalo, Southern Ontario. So obviously a lot of grassroots participation, but, kind of big picture, Rick, how are you seeing the sport of hockey focusing more so on kind of that youth and getting more kids into the pipeline? How are we doing?
Well, I think the sport of hockey is doing extraordinarily well right now. I think not immune to the challenges of youth sports as a whole, and keeping kids in that sort of high school age range, staying in the game, participating, and not dropping out. But I think the sport probably has never been healthier in terms of, USA Hockey membership numbers continue to climb. I think we're seeing the same north of the border. I think as a whole, Hockey Canada is at least it's not losing ground. I think what's really benefiting both Hockey Canada and Hockey USA Hockey right now is the explosion of girls hockey and girls youth participation. Right, it may be masking some of the losses on the boys side of the game, but I think in general, I think when you look at the state of youth sports and we're seeing it now. For years, it was a decline in participation. We're starting to see an uptick. I think hockey's been able to weather that storm a little better than maybe most sports. And I'm excited for where the game's going to go. Obviously, coming off the Olympics and from the U.S. side of things, off 2 gold medals, I think it's going to be interesting to see where membership and interest participation goes in the next couple of years.
Yeah, well, I'm going to date myself here because I'm a product of hockey coming out of 1980, right? So that inspired me to lace up the skates. There were a lot of kids, if as well as I, kind of those, the World Cup of hockey, in the mid to late 90s, which was a nice bump and a lot of visibility to the game. I've got to believe, Rick, what we've just experienced and what the world experienced in Milan, I've got to believe this is going to be a really good opportunity to get more kids at least interested in the game. Wouldn't you say so?
Yeah, I think the one thing I will say is, like, it's always a 2-part equation, John, right? Like it's the interest, the excitement, the awareness, trying to drive kids to the sport for the first time. And there's no question that interest is going to be at an all-time high, especially in the States, coming off the heels of the Olympics. I think the other part of it is we've got to meet that sort of wave of interest with access and opportunity. And as we know, like, ice rinks are challenged to create opportunities for new groups because the ice rinks they're bursting at the seams right now, and the infrastructure can't keep up with the demand. And I think that's going to be our biggest challenge coming into the summer here and leading into the fall registration cycle is going to be how do we intentionally carve out opportunity for newcomers without cannibalizing all the ice from the existing participants. So I think it's going to be interesting how we navigate those waters. But I think we're going to have to be very intentional in the way we approach that as an industry to make sure we don't lose the opportunity that's in front of us by choking off access to the sport when interest and excitement around first-time participation is going to be at record highs.
Yeah. Hey, if you're just tuning in, we're with Rick Nadeau from Nadeau Sports talking about the hockey and participation and how we all in U.S. and Canada kind of leverage the excitement of the Olympics to continue to grow the game. Hey, Rick, maybe on that note, maybe it's time for a second life for the sport of roller hockey, right? Here's a way that we don't need as many rinks. We need some parking lots, and it might be time to bring that sport back.
It might be. I mean, there's a lot of advocates out there for synthetic ice, and I know the NHL has been investing a lot in street and ball hockey and infrastructure across the league.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's again, it's convenience and access, right? Like we've got to make it easy for people to sort of indulge themselves in this energy around the sport, their interest in exploring it deeper. The more challenging and inconvenient we make that, the obviously the harder it's going to be for us to reap the rewards as a sport. We've got to make that as frictionless and as accessible as possible. So I think you're spot on. I think in a street and ball, access in schools and after school programs, those are great ways for us to open the doors and make sure kids have a chance to try the game, probably at a time when interest and excitement around the sport has never been higher.
Yeah, well, and I mean, and we're not living in a bubble here, right? Because obviously in North America, soccer continues to grow participation, right? And the World Cup's gonna bring them a nice bump. Flag football, especially on the women's side, and especially with the backing of the NFL, is going to and continues to really push participation in flag football. Lacrosse is still out there, and at least in our region here, it continues to grow. So, we, and I say we because Rick, you and I are hockey guys, we need to also be cognizant of these other sports that are trying to make their games even more accessible as well. So it's just, it's hockey's opportunity, but to your point, we need to make sure we continue to make it and increase accessibility.
Yeah, I think, John, you're spot on. I mean, listen, and I advise teams that I meet with constantly, because it's if you're doing the same thing as every other sport and you're doing the same thing as every other team, there's no differentiation, right? Like you've got to make kids connect with your game in a way that feels different, that is more meaningful to them, that becomes part of how they identify themselves, and it's something that becomes core to who they are. And the only way to do that is to make your sport so inviting, so welcoming, so exciting and awesome experience that they want to come back for more.
Yeah.
Because at some point, all of us have to choose paths, and we tend to do the things that bring us the greatest joy and excitement and put a smile on our face. Something that we want to go where we feel welcomed and appreciated and cared for. And for me, that was always the sport of hockey.
Yeah.
But I think we're going to have to be very careful in this window, this opportunity that we have right now, to make sure that we are being very intentional in the way we open doors for those that want to come in and reach out and invite them to be part of the community, and then support them through that journey. And how we do that, how we continue to make hockey a sport of choice, a destination for families and kids that they want to keep coming back to. I mean, that's on us, everybody who has a leadership role in the sport, to lean in and to advocate for those that aren't yet in the game, and create the space for them to come in and participate and enjoy that.
Yeah. Well, the NHL, and I know with a lot of participating clubs, including the Sabres, have the whole Goals and Dreams program that does help with the cost of equipment, right? It does help to offset the cost of ice time. And I know just, in our community here in Western New York, I witnessed, 40 kids who had the chance for the first time to be part of a learn to play program, right? All in that 5, 6, 7 years of age. And it was good to see, at least here in our backyard, the Sabres were actively participating in that. And it just, you know what it did, Rick? And you see this across the country. It kind of broke that first, intimidating barrier, which is kind of that cost of entry, right? You're not going to invest, $400, $500, whatever it might be, for all this equipment for a 5 or 6 year old if you don't know yet that they have that passion for the game. But the program like this one with the NHL was a nice way to get people into the sport at a little, lower barrier, and then hopefully that blossoms into playing for a lifetime. So that's, are you seeing things like that with other NHL clubs and other, kind of league initiatives?
Yeah, I think you're seeing a lot more of it, right? The NHL, I think recently we celebrated 10 years of the Learn to Play program, right? Which is sort of that larger scale version of Goals and Dreams, right? Where it's a fee-based program, but kids are getting the equipment package as part of their tuition. So it makes it easier for families, right, who don't know where to go to get the gear, or don't want to be bothered with that headache of shopping around and putting together a set of equipment for their kid for a nominal fee. Usually, between $200 and $300 for a 6 to 10 week session. They're getting the lessons, the ice time, and they're getting the full set of new equipment that they get to keep. To me, those opportunities are priceless, right? And that's why I think you're seeing hockey continue, at least in the States, to grow their numbers, because those accessibility options are increasing. I think that what a lot of the clubs in USA Hockey, NHL are seeing now and are making a concerted effort to bring back is more of like the house league, rec league option, the next step opportunities.
Yeah.
Not to take away from the travel hockey, because there's obviously a need and a desire for families to participate in that pathway as well. But I think we need sort of that alternate option for families who don't really have an interest in the travel and the ultra competitive pathway within hockey to stay in the game and continue to enjoy and participate. And so I think you're seeing that infrastructure being built now. Some parts of the country are further ahead than others, but I think you're going to see more teams investing in versions of house leagues and rec programming, so the kids that graduate from the Learn to Plays and from the Goals and Dreams programs and that have an affordable, reasonably priced next step option to counterbalance what has for the past, call it 2 decades, been almost a singular option of all-in youth travel hockey, which obviously has been successful, but limits the pathway for a lot of families if it's not something that they're interested in.
Yeah, Rick, you're spot on, and I'm glad you brought that up. And we talk a lot on this program on Skin in the Game about the negative aspects of what I would call the privatization of sports, right? And what that's done is it's eliminated a lot of these house leagues, and it's in many cases, whether it's hockey, soccer, swimming, whatever the sport, there's $7,000-8,000 annual investments for these families to be in these programs. You talk about being all in, you're also all in for 9-10 months of the year. That can be really intimidating to a family. Not only can it be inaccessible because of the money side. So I'm glad that what you're at least seeing and what we're hoping is there's a little bit of a movement back to try to reinvigorate these house leagues, right? Whether they be baseball, whether they be hockey or basketball. And I don't know, can you touch a little bit on what you see out there is kind of anything kind of starting to maybe counter back this this commercialization? Is there, are there some examples out there of communities that have reinvested in house leagues and maybe not, provided people another option than being all in on an elite travel team?
Yeah, I think, I don't know there are any great examples right now that come to mind immediately. I mean, obviously, the state of Minnesota has done a remarkable job of keeping the sport affordable, keeping it local. And they figured out, right, obviously, it helps that they have publicly owned facilities across the state that are subsidizing the operating costs of these buildings so they can keep fees down. But they've obviously preserved that intentionally and worked hard to make sure that kids can play locally, that hockey is part of the culture of the state. It hasn't taken away from their ability to produce some of the top talent in the country, right?
Right.
NHL is littered with Minnesota-born product. But I think, you're seeing now, a renewed focus and energy around recreational hockey and trying to create those pathways. And I know in New York, we did that years ago with the Junior Rangers League, that we partnered with a dozen rinks across the tri-state to try to bring it like sort of a hybrid between travel hockey, right, and allowing kids to play and practice on a limited scale within their rinks, but also the excitement of playing on occasion teams from other communities, but under the umbrella of an NHL club, which which made the league and the program more exciting than if it was just a regular old recreational program, right? Where there were some bells and whistles that made playing rec hockey cooler, and I think take some of the stigma away from rec hockey being less than. And I think that's sort of the challenge that a lot of these rinks have is making rec hockey not feel like it's a less than program compared to the travel programs, but also the flip side here is making an honest commitment to carving out ice inventory to support rec hockey, which I think is the biggest challenge, right? So getting organizations, getting ice rink owners and operators to help grow the pie rather than trying to squeeze more out of what's existing, right? Trying to get existing youth players to skate a fourth night, a fifth night a week, do another tournament, extend the season one more month into the spring or summer, of trying to find ways of making that resource, that finite resource, stretch further and create opportunity. So, that's challenge number one. It needs to be addressed. It needs to be solved. And I do think you're going to see more rec-based programming be a primary focus in the next, call it 4 to 6 years.
Yeah. What's funny, I still talk to parents today who have a 4, 5, 6-year-old who I say, hey, is your son or daughter going to, think about playing hockey? And they still say, no. Why? Well, the ice times are at 6 a.m, and it's too expensive. And there's still these, the perception is almost, Rick, the perception's almost worse than the reality with, some of these legacy, early in the morning ice times or exorbitant travel schedules. And that's not always the case. And if there is any rink managers or owners who are listening to this program, please provide your entry-level programs with the best ice times. Leave the early or late ice times to the old-time beer leagues, but give the new entries into the sport the most accessible and convenient ice times, and then they can graduate up from there. Wouldn't you agree, Rick? Being someone who's worked on the rink side.
Oh, I agree 100%. It's like boy, dude, for both of your points. One, the urban legend, right? Used to walk to school both ways, barefoot in 6 feet of snow.
Right.
Not necessarily true. And I think the same thing. Like I think the perceptions become reality, right? People don't want to jump into the sport because of what they think it is, and it's not necessarily what the real experience is. I think we've done a really poor job of combating those perceptions by sharing what the sport is and could be. I think at the same time, yes, I think one of the reasons I think the Learn to Play program has been so successful is because a lot of the clubs are approaching the rink owners and the youth hockey associations with a really strong value proposition, right? Like, we will provide the equipment. We're going to provide alumni player appearances. We're going to provide professional fittings for these families to make their experience wonderful. But in exchange, we need you to commit, a regular hour of ice within particular windows of time that make are convenient for families of young kids, right? If you're trying to go after those 4 to 9-year-olds, it can't be 8 o'clock at night when these kids are going to bed at 7.
Right.
It can't be at noon or 1 o'clock on a Saturday when kids are like, that's lunchtime. Like, it's got to be in that late morning window or the early afternoon window.
Yeah, right.
And you've got to work around family structure and family routine, or else you risk, especially the younger kids, the 4, 5, 6-year-olds, if you don't work into their routines and make it easy to plug and play, they're going to choose other activities that do fit their schedule.
Right.
And so I think that's something we've got to be very, very conscious of as we're building sort of the foundation for this wave that's coming. It's starting now. Kids are going to want to try out, play hockey next year. We've got to make sure that those on-ramps are not only accessible, but they're convenient and attractive for families.
Yeah. And it's so smart for that rink manager or that rink owner, because this is their pipeline, right? Give them that 5 to 6 p.m. slot on a weekday, introduce the kids to the sport, get them through this learn to play program. And then, you know something? Hockey's a great game. You're going to get half those kids, at least half those kids are going to say, hey, Mom, Dad, I like this. You know, can I play again next year, or can I go into this program? And it's a feeder to their house program. So, you know, it makes sense for the league and the teams from a business perspective because they're growing fans, but it also makes so much sense to that rink because they're filling, you know, their pipeline of future participants. So, you know, we need more of that. So, Rick, couple things here before I want to talk a little bit about the women's game. But first, it looks like we do have an opportunity here in the U.S. and I will say in Canada to leverage the excitement of the Olympics. But what we do need to make sure that we go out of our way to make sure we have the accessibility, and that means ice time, that means equipment, and then maybe you and I will reignite the whole street and roller hockey programs to get more hands and sticks, and at least give the kids the chance to experience the game even in that form. Right? Is that a good summary of what we need to do?
Yeah, no, I think that's spot on. I think it's again, it's creating frictionless opportunities for kids to get in the game. And then it's creating pathways, right? Not a one size fits all approach, which is really the way we've approached hockey for many, many years.
Right.
But creating options, right? Families to be able to pick an experience that fits their lifestyle and what they want from the game, and not assuming or insisting that a certain pathway is the only pathway, right? It's the right pathway.
Right.
And so I think all of us are going to have to lock arms around this idea of creating those opportunities, being committed to creating those opportunities, holding other stakeholders accountable for creating those opportunities, and you know, the way I've always phrased it is sort of like we've got to consider and work towards taking care of those who aren't yet in the game and represent them in the room when these decisions are being made, so that we're not just taking the easy path and allocating more ice to the kids that are already here, the families that are already committed, and giving them the prime ice and all the extra access that is being carved out. So spot on. Yeah, I think it's one on the ice, it's that, and then off the ice, it's creating more community-based programs, hockey opportunities for kids in schools and after-school programs, which to me is the other really untapped opportunity within the sport of hockey.
Yeah, for sure. Hey, we're here with Rick Nadeau, Nadeau Sports. Hey, Rick, I wanted to segue to a game in a league that's had some wind behind its sails, even pre-Olympics, which is the Professional Women's Hockey League. You know, I'm not sure if you're doing any consulting work with PWHL, but would really love to get kind of your impressions of what you're seeing, what you're hearing, you know, and the potential and the upside for the women's game.
Right. I mean, what the PW is doing is off the charts amazing, right? They've got some of the best leadership that you could ever put in these roles that are driving the decisions and propelling the sport forward. You know, every experience that I've had with the PW, the franchises, the leagues, the games has been exceptional. Right? They continue to raise the bar, and you know, they're not shying away from the hard work that needs to be done, and then they sort of almost embrace it and celebrate it, and that's why they're so successful. Yeah, I think it's amazing, right? I've had the opportunity to see games in New York and Boston. I saw a game out in Vancouver earlier this year. The energy amongst the fans, the community is off the charts. So it's nowhere but up for the PW for sure. And I think they're obviously positioned themselves well to take advantage of the wave that is now here, and ensure to continue pushing through this season and into next and beyond. And I think they're doing an amazing job, and one of the biggest cheerleaders and advocates for the work they're doing. It's been nothing short of amazing.
Yeah, no, we've had Amy from the PW's been on the program here We've had a few actual players from the Buffalo area who have been on Skin in the Game. So we've been watching the growth and the excitement around that league, since its inception. And it's funny, Rick. Every time I pick up a business trade, they break a new attendance record. I think just most recently they did well over 17,000 fans in Seattle. So, yeah, to your point, they continue to raise the bar.
Yeah, it's amazing. I think, listen, at some point, the speed at which these records are being set is going to sort of level off. And I think their ability to sustain it is really what the next challenge is going to be. But they're heading in the right direction. I have no doubt they're going to meet that opportunity head on and have tremendous success. And I think the amount of effort they're putting into the infrastructure and the way they're scaling the league has been awesome and well thought out.
Yeah,
and they certainly have the right people in the room to work their way through anything that they're behind the scenes we may never know about, the challenges they're facing and the hurdles they're overcoming. But they certainly have the right people in the room to figure those things out. And it's been great.
Yeah,
and, I think right. You see now, like, all these young girl hockey players, the hockey community as a whole, and even going beyond the borders of the sport. The amount of excitement and passion that's in these buildings, packing these buildings on a regular basis. It wasn't invented. It was there. They've just poured gas on the fire and created an opportunity for these folks to share their passion with others. And so they've really done a great job of galvanizing the community around women's hockey and women's sports. And I'm excited to see where they take things next.
Yeah. Well, Rick, I can tell you too, as a fan, right? I got to be honest with you. I had a hard time differentiating the speed and some of the physicality between the men's game and the women's game. The only way I could differentiate it was who had the cages on and who didn't, right? So I think that's a testament also to, the skill of these international women, playing the game of hockey. It's just so awesome to see.
Yeah, I don't think that's anything new either, John. Like, the talent's always been off the charts. I think we're just now, like, it's being appreciated, it's being highlighted and showcased in a way that it never has before. And I think that just helps more people fall in love with the speed and skill that it, like, you see it live. Like, it is hockey. It always has been. It always will be. And they are super, super talented athletes, and it's amazing to watch them apply their craft in an environment that is befitting, the skill that they bring to the game. So I think it's awesome.
Well, that brings us kind of back to full circle right now. And the good news is, hopefully, we'll have twice as many kids wanting to play hockey, right? Because we're adding all these women right into the rinks, into the locker room. So we need to make sure, going back to where we started, we got to continue to look for ways to provide accessibility, provide the ice time, and provide some of the financial support to make sure that these young kids can get into the game. And it's great that our participation levels continue to grow, but we need to make sure that we have the access for these kids, and maybe that's more rinks. Or maybe that's how we strategize around dividing this ice time up. But if we can check those boxes, the league and the game, more importantly, is really well positioned in the future.
Yeah, I think it's all of those things, John. Right? Like, it's being smart about how the ice is being allocated and making sure that there is equitable opportunity for girls. I think USA Hockey is right now, and I'd have to check the stats on this, but I think they're hovering around 20-21% female membership. Mm-hmm. There's room to grow that, obviously, and so how do you get there? It's not just ice allocation. It's you got to create the excitement, and the interest, and market the sport for girls. Intentionally welcome them in. We need more female coaches and referees and women in leadership roles at the local youth hockey associations.
Right.
Within USA Hockey, I think it's all of that. It's being thoughtful about everywhere in the ecosystem. How do we make the sport more representative and more welcoming to the audience we're trying to recruit in. And to me, it's all of that, right? Like you can't just do one; you've got to do it all at the same time. And every incremental gain we make is going to be better for the sport and better for the next generation of players. And I think that's what we've got to be thoughtful about in how we approach this. And I was telling you, like, we were just at a rink yesterday in Massachusetts, right? And my daughter plays on both an all-girls team and a co-ed team, and there are 4 girls on the team, and there was no space for these girls to change. At 12 years old, it's not appropriate for them to be in the locker room changing with the boys. The boys do not want to be changing in front of the girls,
right?
But the girls didn't have a space. And so the solution in this one rink was to kick the referees out of their room and put the girls in there. I guess a fine solution in this one instance, but as more girls enter the game and we need to create space, like we've got to rethink even the simple things like stacking girls' hours back to back so that the regular locker rooms can become, at least for a chunk of time during the day, the girls can feel comfortable going down there and it just being girls in that hallway and in those rooms so that they can change and feel comfortable in those spaces. And I think all of that has to continue to be addressed. We've come a long way since the 70s and 80s, but we're still so far from where we need to be in order to change those numbers and get from 20% to 50%.
Right.
There's still a lot of challenges and hurdles in infrastructure that we've got to work through.
Yeah. No, that's a great point. I'm involved with a not-for-profit. We have a rink in here, Western New York, and this was 15 years or so back. We had the foresight to add, a dedicated girls or women's locker room. But that's just one of 5, right? So that's hitting our 20%. I mean, we need to look at, dedicated 50% of the space to the women's game as well. So that's a lot of infrastructure. But, I think conversations like we're having here, and what USA Hockey's hopefully doing to reinforce this through their leadership, I think we'll get there. That's, one of the things that's holding us back. But I think there's some momentum now to make those positive changes.
Yeah, I agree with that, John. I think everybody's intention and the direction is right. I think our appetite for how quickly we can accelerate those changes and opportunities, I think we will have differences of opinions on that and different levels of aspiration. But we're heading in the right direction.
Yeah.
I think we just got to continue to push and hold each other accountable, and we'll get where we need to get, hopefully sooner rather than later. But we can't assume that the work's been done and that it's good enough. We got to continue to create opportunities and making advancements in all aspects of the sport and not just sport, but society as a whole.
Right.
Sport becomes just a microcosm of what exists in the world. And so, let's control what we can control, I suppose, to a certain level and make an impact where our strengths are and continue to push for advancement in the sport of hockey.
Yeah. Well, Rick, I'm going to leave it there. Well said. And thank you for spending some time with me today and reminiscing on some of the stuff we used to do, but more importantly, focusing on what we can do together to grow the game going forward. So, hey, Rick, I want to thank you for being on Skin in the Game, and I look forward to seeing you at a nice rink soon. Take care, my friend.
All right. Thanks, John. I appreciate you having me on the show. We'll talk soon.
We'll be back right after this.
Authenticity isn't something you manufacture. It's something you experience. At Holiday Valley, winter unfolds across fun slopes and the true ski town of Ellicottville. Ranked number 4 in the East by Ski Magazine. Winter is better here.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Skin in the Game. John, thanks for bringing on Rick Nadeau. That was a fun listen.
Well, it was fun and it was timely because, when we witnessed both the women's and the men's team gold, it kept reminding me of, quite frankly, how I got into the sport of hockey. And it was, that 1980, right? And the energy and more kids on skates. So I thought it was really important that we get Rick on the program because the work he is doing, even before Olympic goals, was all about making the sport of hockey more accessible. You know, you heard me use the phrase a lot, getting more sticks in hands. Mm-hmm. So really great to get him on, and really awesome to get his insights on what they are doing and what we can continue to do to get more kids, boys and girls, on skates.
Yeah, it's like, what are the details in capitalizing on these Olympic wins, right? And how does that actually work? Because it's so easy to say, yeah, the women won, the men won. There's going to be so many kids ready to play. Hockey's not the easiest sport to jump into. I mean, even set aside that it's a tricky sport to learn, but the equipment, the expense of that equipment, the ice time that works for young families or families with young children, all of it really tricky. So for me, that it was instructive just to sit back and think, okay, what is it actually going to take? Did you walk away feeling optimistic that the hockey community as a whole, USA Hockey, but all, you know, the rinks and the organizations that are a part of it, do you feel, is there enough coordination, is there enough focus to actually, by next hockey season, roll out some more opportunity?
Yeah, I actually am optimistic, and probably because I'm a little closer to it, and I have firsthand, witnessed what the NHL does, and NHL partner teams like the Sabres and the Leafs, what they do with grants to get more kids equipment and get more ice time. So it's all about putting more kids into the funnel, right? And by the way, they may not enjoy it and they may decide to go play another sport. That's fine. But at least giving them an option. So I am optimistic that there's things happening and really driven by the NHL. And then, Tim, what we're seeing with the PWHL, right? It's just, I think the biggest challenge is going to be making sure we build enough ice rinks.
Yeah.
That's going to be the challenge.
Oh, for sure. No, I mean, the PWHL, I think, is the best thing going right now. And we've spent a lot of time talking about this with Amy Shear, with Katie Knoll. Amy Shear, of course, being an executive with the league. Right. Katie Knoll being a star player with the Minnesota Frost, who are the champions last year of that league. There's incredible opportunity to get more girls involved in the sport, but we need more rinks, and those rinks need to have a 50-50 split on facilities, just like you guys are talking about. And I'm so glad that you guys got into that. Yeah. I know Rick's window on it is his daughter, who is 12, who is having, his daughter and a few of her 12-year-old teammates playing on a co-ed team were having a hard time literally finding a place in the arena where they could get ready for the game. Right. And not acceptable. I mean, that arena solved it in the story he told. Not acceptable, though, and that's an incredibly common problem.
Yeah, right? It is. And those are just, legacy issues that we're all dealing with in these facilities, many of which are antiquated are dealing with. But what I'm hoping is, if there are people out there now thinking about developers, right, thinking about building a rink or thinking about, adding new infrastructure into their rinks, that because of the success of the women's game, because of the success now on the ice with the men's game as well, that some of those investors and some of those financiers are saying, something, I'm going to put my skin in the game. I'm going to help invest in building these facilities. So it does go hand in hand. So I'm, call me, optimistic here, but I am that we're going to leverage this opportunity. Here's the other thing. And we're based here in Buffalo, New York, right? Skin in the Game is where our production studios are here in Buffalo. There's a hockey team in town that has basically been non-existent for 14 years. Longest playoff drought, right? Well, they're having some success on the ice. And you're seeing it driving huge TV numbers. You're seeing it now, driving more interest in attendance. Ultimately, too, that's going to trickle down to more kids wanting to be involved in the game.
Oh, incredibly. And I remember when the Sabres were last, a perennial playoff team, and
Right.
hopefully they become a perennial playoff team again. And yeah, what that does for youth hockey numbers, there's guys who went on to play for the Sabres or in the NHL who are from Buffalo who were inspired by those teams, and they talk about it. You can see the direct line, and now it's going to be young men and young women who are inspired by that.
Right.
There's a couple of points you guys brought up that I want to throw to you to have you dig into a little bit deeper. One is your friend, great guy, former Buffalo Sabre and Detroit Red Wing icon, Danny Gare, who has a synthetic ice company,
That's right? Yeah.
that can make this sport accessible to people year round and across. This might be even more important, across climates.
Right.
And you brought up roller hockey too.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
And I think you were serious. I don't think it was a lighthearted comment. You were very serious about that.
Yeah.
And both that's hockey, right? Playing it on synthetic ice makes it accessible.
And
roller hockey is a kind of hockey.
And the skills are extremely transferable.
Right.
I mean, roller hockey started in Minnesota as summer training for hockey players.
Right.
So yeah, it's very transferable skill wise. A little easier because on a well paved parking lot you have a rink.
Yeah.
So it makes the game more accessible. Street hockey continues to be popular. Deck hockey. So there's other ways to get people involved in the game that may not require, that $250 per hour ice time.
Yeah. And you brought this up. I mean, it's taking a page from the NFL and their support of flag football.
Exactly.
And the NFL had a lot of reasons to do that, including making the sport accessible to women, including making the sport safer, right? And a lot of that becomes relevant here in hockey too, but more than anything, it's just making the surfaces and the facilities available, right? So I like it. You say get sticks in hands, whether it's on pavement or synthetic ice or ice.
Absolutely, and it's and get as many of these young kids involved early, and don't force them to play. Make it their decision, and if they catch the bug, what's funny about kids, that 5, 6. Even sometimes younger, they love the hockey equipment because they feel like they're putting on armor, like they're a knight.
Oh, it's fun,
right?
Yeah,
it's cool.
It's
the
so
helmet
fun.
And the pads. Now, when they take their first step, on the ice and maybe they fall, maybe they lose a little bit of that.
Or they're really happy they have that equipment on.
But it's so great to see these young kids, and I've had the chance over the last few weeks to be on the ice with some of these first timers, and it's just great to see them, and you can tell just how excited they are. And thanks to the NHL and Buffalo Sabres and other NHL organizations for finding ways to get kids into the pipeline.
And one last one you guys brought up that ties us all together: getting more people, and in particular more women, into the coaching ranks to coach young girls and young boys. Coach both. But you want to make the sport more accessible to young women and girls. Get more women coaching.
Well, right. And now we're not there yet, but we're getting there because
getting closer.
There's more girls that have been playing the last 10 years so that they can now evolve into those leadership roles.
Right.
So it all goes hand in hand.
Well, that was a great conversation. I'm sorry that I wasn't there for it, but I was happy to be the first listener.
No, but
and happy to help you share.
Yeah, no, I wish you were. I'm glad you listened to it. We wanted to get that interview in while we were still in hockey season and still, having that post-Olympic glow, if you will.
You know it. That is so true.
So yeah, I want to again thank Rick Nadeau for joining us on Skin in the Game, and thank everyone for listening. Until next time.
See you next week.